Hi guys, and welcome back to another true crime and makeup time video. If you're new here, my name is Zara and I post a new true crime video every single day. No, I don't. Every single week. So if you're interested in these kinds of videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button, guys, so you can join the fam and not miss another upload. So today's case is one that you guys may have heard of before. And I mean, I followed this closely when this happened, and just one of those cases that is so bizarre. It takes place in Colorado and caused a media frenzy due to the way things played out. A young 11-year-old boy vanishes into thin air after being looked after by his stepmom. What made this case baffling was the video footage, but mostly the strange, bizarre, wild behavior of his stepmom. The lies upon lies, and the question, what happened to Gannon? Let's jump in. So let's begin by talking about Gannon and his family. So Gannon, he was born on September 28th, 2003 to his parents Eugene Albert Stauch and Landon Hoyt. He was born in South Carolina and he was born 3 months premature, and at birth he only weighed 1 pound 6 ounces, which is like 700 grams. The doctors were scared he was not going to make it, and if he did survive, he was only going to have a 10% chance of survival, and if he did survive that 10%, he was going to have a lifetime full of difficulties. That alone is so terrifying, and if you've ever had a baby, you know how much importance they place on their birth weight and how terrifying that can be, and the doctors felt like Gannon was just going to have to struggle for the rest of his life. But not only did Gannon pull through, he defeated his obstacles. He grew up to be a strong, healthy boy who dodged most obstacles that doctors believed he was going to have to face. When Gannon was 3 in 2011, did I say he was born in 2003 before? I meant he was born in 2008. So when Gannon was 3 in 2011, his parents had another child, his sister, Lena. Then a few years later, his parents began having some trouble in their marriage. The couple would play in a local softball team, and in 2013, Al, so his dad went by Al, would meet a woman named Letitia Hardin. Letitia was an ex-teacher, and she was good at softball. She played competitively and also throughout high school, and she grew up in the area of Lumberton, North Carolina. At the time, Letitia had a 12-year-old daughter named Harley Hunt. But soon after, in 2014, Al and Landon's marriage would not survive. They would end up separating, and before the divorce was finalized, Al began dating Letitia. It's been alleged that while they were struggling in their marriage, Al and Landon did cheat on each other, a few times, and Al probably cheated on Landon with Letitia. Al was in the military as an Army National Guardsman, and before the divorce, the family was stationed in South Carolina, and then after the divorce, Landon just stayed there in Myrtle Beach. Al would later move to Colorado Springs with Letitia and her daughter Harley, and they lived in this upper-class neighborhood called Lawson Ranch. It was a new development at the time and pretty much had nothing else around it but like new houses. Al would later move his family there due to his job. Many military officials lived in Lawson Ranch due to its close proximity to 3 military bases, and the neighborhood did not experience high crime levels. Fast forward to January 2015, that's just a year later, very fast after his divorce from Landon, Letitia and Al would get married. Letitia went by T. So T was now Gannon and Lena's stepmom. Landon also remarried pretty quickly to a man named Mike. For a few years after that, the kids would move back and forth between Al's house and Landon's house, Colorado Springs and Myrtle Beach for holidays and summer breaks. And that would have been pretty stressful all around for both families for the kids because it's like a 5-hour flight or like a 27-hour drive. But over time, Al began having some concerns about the kids' safety at Landon's house. He was worried about drugs being around them, particularly due to Landon's new husband, Mike. Landon at the time was pregnant with her 3rd child, a daughter she would later name Nova, and that pregnancy was considered high risk Because of this, she was given strict orders to be on bed rest, which obviously did not offer her the time or the opportunity to really care for Gannon and Lena. Then in 2018, 2019, Al and Letitia were awarded primary care of Gannon and Lena, and then they moved permanently to Colorado Springs. It seemed like both parties remarried people who weren't amazing. Like Letitia had her own fair share of troubles. When she was only 18, she was charged with simple assault and making threats, but these charges were dropped. Later, she was arrested for stealing a car and she was sentenced to 45 days in jail, given a $1,000 fine and 18 months probation. After this, she marries Harley's father, Chance Hunt, and he had a long list of offenses, like over 70 offenses. Then in 2010, Letitia was arrested for domestic violence and abuse, and following this, Letitia's teaching license was suspended. Tragically, in 2014, at the age of just 34, Letitia's ex, Chance, he died from a drug overdose. But Letitia never told her daughter, Harley, the truth about how her father died. She told her that her father was attacked during a home invasion gone wrong. Harley would only learn about her father's true cause of death when she was 20 years old. She found out online and eventually learned a lot more things about her mom. So in 2017, Al was stationed in Alaska for his job, so the family had to move from South Carolina. Letitia hated Alaska and she did not want to move, but she did. Keep in mind, they were only together for 3 years at this point, so you would hope that the honeymoon phase was still alive and Letitia would understand Al's job. But anyway, Harley later gave evidence stating that Letitia would say that she was going to commit suicide if they had to stay in Alaska any longer. Gannon and Lena at the time would spend their summers in Alaska, and then during the school term would go back and live with their mom, Landon, in Myrtle Beach. So later, at the end of 2018 or so, Letitia accuses 2 of Al's co-workers of sexually assaulting her, and she files a complaint. Soon after this, Al was relocated back to Colorado Springs, which is believed to have been Letitia's motive for filing this complaint all along. Then Letitia soon tells Al, "Oh my God, hooray, I'm pregnant with twins." She wasn't. Enough about the parents, let's talk about this beautiful boy, Gannon. In 2020, Gannon was a 5th grade student at Grand Mountain School in El Paso County. He was said to be a quiet, shy boy, but was really kind. His favorite color was blue. He loved tacos, Legos, his Nintendo Switch, and especially the game Sonic. He had many friends, had a playful personality. He loved the outdoors. He loved riding his bike and playing sports. His goal was actually to become a YouTube gamer. His close friends and family would call him G, and his sister Lena would lovingly refer to him as Bubba. Gannon and Lena were close. He was super protective of her. He wouldn't even let her walk home alone from the bus stop, which was only 3 houses away from them. Honestly, sounds like such a sweet boy. So on January 25th, 2020, Al was scheduled to travel for work to Oklahoma, leaving Letitia at home alone with the 3 kids. Now, he did this often because his work would take him away for 3 to 14 days at a time. We'll get into this a little bit more later, but it's funny that Letitia chose to work with kids as a teacher and get pregnant with more kids because she didn't like working with Al's kids. She resented always being left alone to care for the kids. She felt like a glorified nanny and babysitter. And this is known through her extensive Google searches. And if we can learn one thing from true crime cases is that people always Google how they feel or acts they want to commit. So here are some of Letitia's searches, okay? It kind of takes place a lot at 1 to 2 p.m. and then some at 8 p.m., okay? So I'm over doing all the work for my stepkids and their mom doesn't help. My husband's ex-wife does nothing for her kids. I wonder if my husband's ex-wife is sending me a Valentine's card since I raise her kids. One day, some people will wish they treated you differently. Find me a rich guy who wants me to take care of his kids. Some deleted but recovered searches were, I feel like I'm just a nanny, not a stepmom. My husband uses me to babysit his kids. I'm just a glorified babysitter. Sent my husband sexual text messages and he ignores them. Make my husband want me more. Yeah, so clearly she was having some issues with Al. And in regards to her employment status, there were a couple of mixed reports. So some were saying that the Friday before Al left to go to Oklahoma, Letitia was fired from Mountain Ridge Medical School where she was due to start a teaching job soon. And she was apparently undergoing training. But then some sources are saying that she was due to start the job on the following Monday. So Al left on Saturday. So Letitia was due to start the job on Monday. So I'm not sure exactly what the real story is there. So the next day after Al leaves, it's Sunday, January 26th, 2020, and Letitia, Harley, and Gannon, they're due to go for a hike and they want to go to the Garden of Gods Visitor and Nature Center. At the last minute, Harley is called into work, so she doesn't end up joining them. So Gannon and Letitia go on this hike. I'm not sure where Lena was during this time. So apparently on this hike, Gannon is kind of struggling because he had hurt his foot the night before on some wooden planks in the garage. So his foot was hurting during the hike, and then apparently he was also having some stomach pains and he lost control and had an accident in his pants. So they end up leaving the hike to go home and clean Gannon up. So later that night, Letitia speaks to Al and she lets him know that Gannon was not feeling well, he was sick. And she also just quickly tells him about this incident where Gannon damaged the carpet. He apparently spilled a candle on it, which led her, like she had to cut out a piece of the carpet because it was burnt. The next day is Monday, 27th January 2020, and Letitia phones Gannon's school to let them know that he was not going to be attending because he was sick. Then she allegedly rings work to let them know that she was also not going to be attending, and I'm guessing it's that new job she was supposed to be starting. But she tells them that she can't come to work that day, not because her stepson is sick, but because her stepfather was killed after being hit by a car. Now, that was true. That did happen to Letitia, but her stepfather was killed years prior. So who knows why she lied on that day? No one knows. So anyway, according to Letitia, that day Gannon stayed at home from school due to a stomach ache, but he did go with her to run some errands twice to Petco, and then later in the afternoon, he walks to his friend's house. At 5 p.m., Harley returns home from work, and then the day goes on. At 6:55 p.m., Letitia makes a phone call to 911. She tells them that her stepson, Gannon, is missing. He had gone to a friend's house and he hadn't returned home as yet. She said she went to the neighbor's house, she looked around, she called his friends, and no one had heard from Gannon. She initially spoke to Al and said, Gannon's gone to a friend's house and hasn't returned home as yet. Al then apparently called a few friends and then no one had seen Gannon, so that's when he told Letitia to call the police, and then Al was immediately on his way back from Oklahoma. Gannon was supposed to be home by 6 p.m. Police initially believed that Gannon was a possible runaway, so they actually entered his name into state and national databases as an active runaway at 7:32 p.m. that night. But Gannon was not a troublemaker. Where would he run off to and why? The area surrounding them had nothing, no place to hide. Around 10 p.m., the police arrive at the Stauch household and they speak to Letitia and ask about what happened that day. They look around the house and find that Gannon has left his phone behind. They asked Letitia, well, which friend's house did Gannon visit? And then Letitia was like, I don't know, I don't keep track of his friends. They asked her, well, what time did Gannon leave? And she goes, well, I was working out, so I don't really know. I didn't hear the door close behind me, but it was between 3 and 4 p.m. She tells them about how Gannon was sick that day and he stayed home from school. And I must say, during this whole encounter, she seems pretty upbeat. A 6-week-long investigation begins in the search for Gannon Stauch. The next day, Tuesday, January 28th, Al is due to return home from work and Letitia goes to pick him up at the airport. But when she gets there, she's driving a rental. So Al was like, where's your car, Letitia? And she was like, oh, I'm getting pretty close to, my mileage cutoff and I don't want to pay for the extra miles. So I've got this rental. And she tells him that she left her black VW Tiguan in like a school parking lot, and her friend drove her to the rental company where she got this car. And Al was like, the fuck? Like, he found the whole story really weird. So later on that night, he drives to this school parking lot that she says she's left her car in to check if her car was there. It wasn't. Also, tension was already high in the Stauch household because Landon had flown down, obviously, to help in the search for Gannon. Letitia and Harley were actually supposed to pick her up from the airport, but they just never showed. Instead, they went to a local hotel in Harley's white VW Jetta, and they ended up staying there the night. Now, the reason for this was because Al had allowed Landon to stay at their house, and Letitia was pissed. I mean, your stepson's missing, Landon's biological son is missing, and you're pissed off that your husband's ex-wife is going to be staying in the house. Your priorities are not right. At this point, the community begins a very active search for Gannon. Hundreds of volunteers come forward, search dogs, drones are used. A Facebook group is created to help in the search for Gannon, for any sightings to be reported. Al lets police know that a brown suitcase of theirs was missing, and the search of Gannon's phone shows that he Googled, "Can my parents find me if my phone is off?" So the next day, Letitia, she returns that rental car and she agrees to go down to the police station for an interview at 10 a.m. Now, she agrees to go to the police station instead of them coming to her house because she didn't want the police around the children. Before she goes down to the police station though, she grabs her own car because remember, she returned that rental vehicle. So she grabs her own car, the black VW Tiguan, she drives it to a car wash, gets it squeaky clean, and then arrives at the police station 2 hours late at 12 p.m. Police obviously notice this and her car is immediately seized. Around 10 p.m., the deputies arrive at the Stauch household. They spoke to Letitia once again and they asked if they can search the house, which they were allowed to do. But Gannon was nowhere to be found. So at the police station is when we hear Letitia's version of events, all four of them. Now, there is so much nitty-gritty evidence and it can get quite confusing. So I'm gonna try and just give you the most important information, but in a proper timeline. Letitia, during this interview with the police, brings handwritten notes and asks the police if she can read off of them.
Is it okay if I take my notes out? Because I wrote down all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I was like, I tried to write down anything he might say and just in case.
Her version of events is now a tad different than what she had told the police previously. So first she says that Gannon, was feeling sick that day and he stayed at home from school and then he went with her to Petco to run these errands. Then she tells them about the candle story. She says the night before the Sunday, Gannon, he lit a candle to hide the smell of diarrhea, and that was because he was sick. And this candle then was dropped or spilled onto the carpet. This then caused the carpet to burst into flames and trigger the smoke alarm. When Letitia walked into the room, she noticed 2 to 3 foot flames coming from the carpet. She put out the fire and then later told Al about it. She also texted Al a photo of Gannon sleeping at 8:18 a.m. the next morning. Al later would say it was weird for Gannon to even light a candle by himself. It was just unlike him. Then she says that Gannon's forearms were burned from the candle fire. She says that Gannon got his blood on the walls from this injury, these burns. And Letitia had to cut out a piece of the carpet from where, the candle wax fell, and she planned to replace that part of the carpet the next day. So the next day, as she's driving, she passes by an area that was under construction. She speaks to a worker named Eduardo, and she tells him about her candle situation, about, the burned carpet, and she asked him if he was able to fix this for her. She tells him she would pay him for this and he agrees, so she gives him the garage code to enter the home. They then went to Petco to run errands, and CCTV footage from the Petco shows Letitia by herself, but she keeps like looking out the window, so it's assumed that Gannon is in the car at the time. So at 1:22 p.m. they're at Petco again, for the second time, and Gannon's phone receives and sends texts. One text was sent to his dad at 1:21 p.m. asking him if he can play the game Zelda. His dad says no. Then at 1:43 p.m., the search was made on Gannon's phone, the one asking if his parents can find him if his phone is turned off. Now, detectives believe that this search was actually made by Letitia due to the way in which it was spelled, similar to Letitia's Google searches. When Letitia and Gannon return home at about 2:30 p.m., Eduardo is now there, but he has one of their guns and he threatens them. He then sexually assaults Letitia, and Gannon tries to fight him off before Eduardo now puts the gun to Gannon's head. He then asks Letitia for a suitcase, which she gave him, and then he kidnapped Gannon. She doesn't call the police. Instead, she cleans up the crime scene to prevent the other kids from finding out what happened. She then says, I cleaned the scene using cleaning products like bleach. So if you do use luminol, if you happen to use it and it like lights up, looks like blood, that's probably just the bleach. And it's also why my entire house smells like bleach. This was obvious bullshit. So during her interview, her phone was seized and then an application for a warrant to get her DNA was made. When this happens, Letitia then begins to shove tissues down her pants and says she peed herself and her chest was hurting her.
Ow. I just accidentally peed a little. Thank you.
Are you Letitia?
Yes.
Hi, I'm Kent. I'm a paramedic with the fire department. What's going on?
I have a little bit of chest pain.
Okay.
Just like right here, and now I can't breathe. I just tried to get him to open the door.
So obviously she was then taken to the hospital to be evaluated, and suddenly when she was at the hospital, she recovered. The Holy Ghost is a powerful thing. So at the hospital, the police wanted to do their due diligence. Letitia claimed she had been assaulted by Eduardo, so they wanted to conduct a rape kit on her. So when that's about to happen, Letitia tells the nurse, I want to have my daughter Harley with me in here for support. So the nurse is like, okay, let's Letitia leave the room to go to the waiting room to get Harley. But instead, Letitia sneaks out of the hospital and Harley picks her up at a nearby Taco Bell. Now, because Letitia was not under arrest at the time, the police couldn't really do anything. The next day, January 30th, 2020, Gannon's status is changed from a runaway to an endangered missing child. So the following day, Letitia chooses to do a live interview with a reporter named Spencer Wilson. Now, this interview was, I guess, the part of the case that really stuck with me the most when I watched it years ago, because it really is just so bizarre. First of all, she does the entire interview with her back facing the camera. So all you see of her is the back of her hair, and then you see the full reporter. And I remember thinking I had never seen an interview kind of like that before. Usually if someone is trying to stay anonymous, they just don't appear on camera. Or they get blurred out. It's just so weird. So in this interview, Letitia is very confident. She's talking about how the community needs to work together in the search for Gannon and not falsely accuse her. She says she's receiving death threats, how she's so stressed because she can't even go home because the ex-wife now lives there, etc., etc. She says the police are violating her rights. She took care of Gannon. She would never hurt him. Then she says she can't wait for Gannon to come home so he can tell everyone the truth about what happened to him, how she needed an apology from everyone, especially her husband.
Any message for Gannon?
Gannon, when you get here, you'll be able to truly tell what happened. And then I really hope I get a sincere apology from everyone who has made all those things, especially from my husband.
Like I said, she's very confident, almost demanding in this interview. And when she makes that last statement about how she needs an apology from everyone, she kind of rewinds and then thinks, damn, maybe I was a bit too harsh in that statement. Hey, cameraman, let's redo that take. She then repeats that last part about Gannon returning home, about how she misses him, wants him to come home. But this time, she's crying.
I can't wait till you can come home and let everyone know that you're okay. We love you.
She's so genuine, guys. Like, come on, look at her. She's so genuine. After this, on February 1st, Letitia and her daughter Harley decide it's time to move because everything is just too contentious in the Stauch household. So their plan is to move to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. They hire a budget van and they make the extremely long drive there. They stop at hotels to rest along the way before finally arriving in Myrtle Beach on February 6th. No need to stay and search for Gannon, who was last in your care. On the drive there, Harley says that Letitia blasted the air conditioning even though it wasn't hot. Then on February 2nd, a neighbor comes forward with CCTV footage from his home cameras of two people outside Gannon's home. It appears to be Letitia coming and going on the day of Gannon's disappearance. You do see Gannon also in this footage, and he seems so sluggish and slow, just not the normal behavior of an active 11-year-old boy. So the footage shows the two of them leaving their home at 10:15 a.m. in Al's Nissan Frontier car on Monday, January 27th, but it only shows Letitia returning. The same car returns at about 2:29 p.m. and just one person gets out of the vehicle and goes inside, and that's Letitia. But Gannon was not seen on the footage, but it is believed that Gannon did exit the car, but he exited on the other side, like through the other passenger door, which is obstructed from the camera's view. On February 5th, Gannon's family makes a gut-wrenching plea. His mom makes a statement saying, "A kid doesn't just disappear and no one sees him. So if you have anything that's credible, if you're afraid, don't worry about it. Imagine my son. Imagine how afraid he is." At the end of the statement to the media, his sister Elena says, "I love you, Bubba." It's honestly so upsetting. So upsetting. Like, my kids love each other so much. Can you imagine how Lena was feeling not knowing where her brother was? At this point, the police felt that they had plenty of evidence to arrest Letitia. So on March 2nd, 2020, Letitia was arrested for the murder of Gannon Stauch. Even though they didn't have a body, they had a strong suspicion that Gannon was no longer alive. But Letitia's arrest did not come easily. She was arrested in Myrtle Beach and she tried to escape in her car, and she even assaulted an officer with an unopened can of Monster. The footage is like, she's nuts. She's nuts. At this point, Gannon's home was searched multiple times. His room was in the basement along with Harley's. When luminol was used, there was traces of blood everywhere. They found it in the hallway leading to Gannon's room, up the staircase, in the garage. In Gannon's room, they found large amounts of blood. Not only was there so much blood soaking into the carpet, but it was so much blood that it soaked through the carpet, through the underlay, and down into the concrete below. There was blood found on the wall next to Gannon's bed, as well as on his mattress, and it lined up with where his head would have been laying. They also found cleaning equipment with the carpet fibers still on it, and then this huge empty bottle of vinegar. Now, Letitia's stories continue to change at every opportunity, even when she was talking to Al. She talked about the candle incident and how Gannon's burns were so bad that his skin was bubbling, that Gannon peeled these burns and wiped the blood on his bedroom wall, despite Al not mentioning to Letitia about any blood being found in the home. Then a video of Gannon is found that Letitia accidentally took the night before he went missing. This was the same night as the candle incident. And honestly, this video really pisses me off. It's really like distressing because she's disciplining Gannon, saying, you know, we need to sell stuff to be able to fix the carpet that you damaged. And Gannon's like crying when she's saying this. And it's obvious that she's trying to like make him upset by making the situation bigger than it was. You know, you burn the carpet, so we're all going to be so poor because we have to replace it. Like, she's making him feel horrible about it. He's crying. Now, this video is not believed to have been accidental at all because Letitia had apparently done this to Al a couple times before. You know, she pretended to accidentally record him almost to keep it as like evidence to use against him. And they believe that she was doing the same thing with Gannon to prove that Gannon was still alive on the Sunday night. Another story of Letitia's was now that a man named Quincy Brown was her rapist and Gannon's abductor. But Quincy Brown was recently on the most wanted list on TV, and it's believed that Letitia had just seen him on TV and decided to blame him. Okay, so another story now is that on that day, Gannon was riding his bike and he fell and he hit his head. And as he was laying there in pain, Quincy ran up to him and abducted him. Letitia basically made up stories based on evidence she believed was going to be found, and then that was her way of explaining the said evidence. The blood on the walls. Okay, so he wiped his wounds on the walls. You know, Gannon hitting his head. Was Gannon going to be found with a head injury? How come blood was found on the mattress where Gannon's head would lay? That would be consistent with a head injury. Then that same night, it was found that Letitia did not allow Lena to see Gannon, and she told her Gannon was sick. She then sent her daughter Harley, together with Lena, to the store asking them to buy carpet cleaner, trash bags, and baking soda. So remember when she rented that car to go pick up Al from the airport? Well, turns out that her car, the Tiguan, the black Tiguan, was parked at the airport and parked in the short-term parking lot. She returned back to that parking lot at 7 p.m. that night. It is believed that Letitia likely hid Gannon's body inside her car to prevent Al from finding out what she had done. That she may have driven this car to the airport when the girls were at the store getting her supplies. After obtaining the GPS information of all the vehicles involved, the police searched this area that was between Highway 105 and South Perry Park Road. On February 15th, they found this piece of particle board that had some blood on it, and this blood matched Gannon's DNA, but they still did not find Gannon. The police affidavit stated, Letitia lied to investigators on multiple occasions, has unexplained abnormal behavior such as obtaining a rental car, disconnecting her cell phone from the cellular network, false reporting of an alleged rape, abnormal patterns of travel, a continuously evolving story with material changes in facts and circumstances, and has since left the state of Colorado. On March 18th, 2020, bridge inspectors were just doing a routine inspection of the Escambia River Bridge in Florida. One of the men saw a pink suitcase lying underneath the bridge, but noticed an overwhelming smell coming from it. He regrettably opened the suitcase and was horrified. Inside was a small body in the fetal position, inside of bed sheets and a comforter. He later described what he saw as 2 little feet with football socks and knew it was a human. The body was identified as belonging to 11-year-old Gannon Stauch, dead at 11 years old and so far away from home. The autopsy found he had 18 stab wounds, 4 blunt force injuries, and a bullet wound to his lower jaw. The toxicology report also found Tylenol and hydrocodone. He had been drugged, which would describe his slow movements in that neighbor's CCTV footage. It was later discovered that a few months prior, Al had suffered an injury which he was prescribed hydrocodone for, but he did hide it away from his kids. He kept it away in his nightstand. Al, Landon, and Lena were devastated. I can't imagine the pain knowing Gannon died suffering from these horrific injuries, stuffed in a suitcase by someone who was supposed to care for him, someone they trusted. The wild thing is that bridge was only checked once every 2 years. Imagine they had just checked the bridge in January of 2020. They would never have discovered Gannon till 2022, and that's if they even found him. It's believed that Letitia was unhappy in her marriage and resentful of being treated like an unpaid babysitter. She was sick of looking after her husband's kids and wanted to hurt Landon and Al. Letitia is believed to have killed Gannon after returning home from the pet store. She shot him, stabbed him, and then proceeded to cover up his death. Letitia's DNA was found on a 9mm handgun found in the home that matched the bullet wound found in Gannon's jaw. The trial was delayed multiple times because Letitia suddenly remembered, oh, I'm crazy. She completely flipped, right? So she displayed erratic behavior. She tried to escape a lot, attacked officers. She was an idiot. But mental health assessments were done, and it was found that she was competent enough to stand trial. She then tried to represent herself, but then changed her mind. She first pled not guilty, but then pled guilty by reason of insanity. Her defense lawyer stated that she had a psychotic crack on the day she killed Gannon, that she was insane. But when Al was asked, he said, I believe she is and was absolutely sane from the time I met her to even today. So she wasn't fooling anybody. Letitia claims she shot Gannon accidentally because she saw a man in a black cape in his room and thought it was an intruder. So in her attempt to protect Gannon, she shot and killed him. Letitia was completely unaffected during the trial. She maintained her innocence and even flipped off witnesses and family members. Her own brother testified that he had seen her moving this pink suitcase on the day she hired that budget van to move to Myrtle Beach. And he actually offered her help to move this suitcase into the van, but she declined him, telling him that, no, it's just got my softball gear in it. How did the suitcase end up in Florida? Well, this was one of the many stops that Harley and Letitia made on their drive to Myrtle Beach. Harley testified that she really did not know about the suitcase, that she never questioned her mom because she would slap her. Harley believes that when she was asleep in the hotel during their stop in Florida, her mom threw the suitcase containing Gannon's remains over that bridge. On April 30th, 2021, Al's divorce from Letitia was finalized. Just last year, on May 8th, 2023, the jury found Letitia guilty on all counts, and there were a lot of them. So it was first-degree murder of a child under 12 by someone in a position of trust, first-degree murder, child abuse resulting in death, tampering with a deceased human body, tampering with physical evidence, crime of violence, that was 8 counts, attempted escape. Letitia was sentenced to life in prison with no possibility of parole. I watched the sentencing trial with the victim impact statements. I'll leave it linked below if you guys are interested as well, but I don't know how these families do it. The victim impact statements of Al and Landon broke me, really broke me. What Al must feel like knowing that his wife at the time took away the life of his child. Letitia is a stupid bitch. I do not understand how grown-ass people can be so evil that they only think about themselves and their own feelings over a child's. Oh, I don't feel appreciated. No one thanks me. Welcome to the life of motherhood. That's the life of a parent. You don't feel appreciated because what? You're not being told every day how amazing you are? You know how kids appreciate you? By giving you hugs, by wanting to spend time with you, by wanting to play with you. That's how kids show you appreciation and love. I feel sorry for Harley that Letitia is her mom. I'm heartbroken for the Stauch family, for little Lena, for his baby siblings. They will never have Gannon again, someone who I bet was like the best big brother. He looks so sweet, like he fought for his life at birth only for it to be snuffed out by this monster. And just like in the cruel way which she took his life, I don't understand how people can do that to a child, especially a child that you had been raising for the last few years. Prayers to Gannon's family, to little Gannon, to little Lena, to his siblings. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, guys. And I will see you in next week's video. Besitos.